Hello, everyone. I'm Manny Talavera. I'm going to be your host this evening. As some of you know, I'm part of a team of 10 people working on a documentary on men's mental health and suicides. We have a group of creatives, photographers, videographers, directors, producers, therapists, and we're coming together to create some content to bring awareness to men's mental health. Today, we have a special guest, Matty Johnson. He is a firefighter paramedic for Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, and he's going to be here sharing his story on his journey on mental health, depression, addiction, suicidal ideations, and his comeback story as well. Matty, it's an honor and pleasure to be here with you, brother. Thank you for joining and being so willing to share your story.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's a good thing.
I met you a couple months ago at Key Biscayne Rucking, and we spoke for about 30 minutes, and I knew after speaking to you we'd be collaborating at some point. You have a powerful story that I think has the potential to touch many lives and give some light and hope in people that might find themselves in a dark situation.
100%. You never know how that story is going to go, especially when you're talking to somebody and you get into a conversation and you're like, oh yeah, I'm out here, I'm trying to get, back in shape and get ready for work. And, would you have surgery? And I'm like, yeah, I had a liver transplant.
Right.
So, yeah, it's always interesting. They're like, excuse me? So, no, I'm glad this happened.
Right.
Stars aligned. So it's going to be pretty good.
So tell me a little bit about your story. What's your origin story?
Origin story. I'd be a very interesting Marvel character. I'll tell you that much. Definitely one that matured and got better towards the end of the story, so to speak. I grew up in Miami. I had two amazing parents, which I really need to hit hard on this because when we get a little bit further into, my struggles and everything that I went through, I think it's important to really get into the fact that, like, I didn't come from a hard upbringing or something like that, or from disadvantages, so to speak. So I had two loving parents. My dad was a Metro Dade police officer, and then owned a security company after that. My mom worked for him. He was also an Army vet. He was first lieutenant in the infantry during Vietnam. So I grew up in a somewhat of a structured household. My dad was like a man's man. Very cool. It was really neat having a father that was very present. I think I took on a lot of that. Like, I was, very applicable when it came to, like, working with tools or sports or stuff like that. I had someone to have catch with and things like that. It was pretty amazing. And my mom was his sidekick. Is his queen. And they were still in a very devoted and loving relationship. And my childhood was pretty cool. I was very rambunctious, to say the least. Got on Ritalin at a very young age, very hyperactive. Come to find out later, I guess it was now being deemed as being part of the spectrum. My parents at the time, I guess, didn't want me to be somewhat segregated as far as my education was concerned, and just decided to roll with, attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity. I struggled with a lot of, like, small little inconsistencies in my life when I was younger. I liked being alone a lot. I liked being in closed rooms with the lights off. I liked hiding in closets. It was very interesting. It felt like everything was very, very loud for me, and information came real quick. I excelled in academia, I guess. Conduct, not so much. I was the A3F student, so to speak. Right up until middle school, I started getting in trouble a little bit in middle school. Acts of, I guess, like aggression and rage for the most part. Again, getting back to my family dynamic, and I don't want to use this as an excuse, but my family's Irish, and drinking was very prevalent in my household growing up. And it wasn't like an abusive drinking aspect. But again, at this point in my life, I can sit there and say that both my parents are alcoholics and not have an issue with saying that. And so it was everywhere. It didn't matter what we were doing, whether we were celebrating, what we were mourning. Alcohol was very, very important, I guess, in the family structure. And, in high school was probably the first time I started drinking, and, I fell in love with it. And it was also done at family functions. So it wasn't like, oh, he's 16 years old, he can't have a drink. It was more
normalized.
It was accepted. And I mean, that was also very much in the culture too in Miami when I was growing up. Everybody was sneaking beers, like even like at a quince. Everyone, even like at a quince or something like that. It was it was always around. And yeah, right around that time, like I think that's when I really just started my love affair with alcohol. At this time, I can look back now and say that like I was starting to have a little bit of like issues with depression. I dealt with a lot of acute like trauma through death at a very young age. I was a pallbearer while I was in high school for one of my best friends. Even after that, it was like I couldn't catch a break when it came to my friends passing away, whether it was from drug use, suicide became very prevalent, or like car accidents. But you know, it's crazy when you think about it, all somewhat centered around alcohol for me in my life. Everything had to do with partying. High school, I went to a couple different high schools. Went to Columbus, got kicked out of there. Went to Sunset, got kicked out of there. Ended up doing a little time in another one, and then was able to go back to Sunset. And I was drinking like crazy. Really didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated high school. I was working at a bar. I'll shout it out because I love it. It's a mom and pop bar in Kendall called Keg South. I was there for a very long time. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to learn the business. I had like a good amount of money at a young age, which meant that having that constant cash flow in my pocket, I could go out and I could drink. And at 17, 18 years old, no one really knew I had a beard. So no one really know that, like, hey, this guy's not 21. He's in the biz. He's already working. Like, we're not going to card him or anything like that. Right around that time, you know, I was thinking about, you know, figuring something out. I had a very good friend of the family who retired from your fire department that was sitting at the bar one day, and he was just like, you need to, you know, be a fireman. He's like, you'll love it, you know. And he was a really good friend of my father. His name was Tony Gamiotia. And,
oh man, I work with Tony.
Yeah, Station 5. And he used to joke around with my dad. It was so much better, you know, to be a fireman than a cop. And when he made the comparison, it was funny because it was like, well, do you like hanging out with your friends? And I was like, yeah, I love hanging out with my friends. He's like, you like having sleepovers? I go, of course. Who doesn't? He's like, you like eating pizza and having dinner and doing all these things and going on adventures? I said, shit, yeah, why not? He's like, you like the big trucks, right? I go, yeah. And he's like, you like fire? And I go, fuck yes, of course. And he's like, well, and then my dad was just kind of standing there and he looks at me and he's like, just be a fireman. And he had nothing on the cop aspect that sounded somewhat endearing. So around that time, I started doing EMT school, EMT and then fire, or EMT medic and then fire. Also right around this time, like I still haven't really grown out of my teen angst stage for the most part. So the drinking had really turned on. You know, now I'm starting to get into my 21, 22 years old, and I'm really, really, you know, getting involved in alcohol. Going to parties, going to clubs, doing these things. I was also in a punk rock band at that time. So we did like a small stint with touring. And it was just insane.
How frequent were you drinking?
I'd say it's crazy. This is a very interesting question because like you can't answer this with, I was drinking a lot, because it's different to, you know, different people. When I was younger, like I was drinking beer, and then like I occasionally take a shot. I wasn't really into like hard liquor or stuff like that. Right around 21, 22, you start going out with the big boys and stuff, and they start ordering Jack and Daniels and shit like that. And it's like, oh man, they're on a different level. Like I'm drink 12 beers, I'm fat, exhausted, I need to go home. So I was drinking, when I was in the bar, I was probably drinking 5-6 days a week. If I took a day off, it was because I had a hangover. But again, at that point, it wasn't to the point where I was like drinking to get hammered. I was having a beer after work. Yeah, I wasn't drinking, I guess, in a medicinal aspect. I wasn't drinking to
escape something.
Yeah, to shy away from something. But that eventually ends up happening. So I ended up getting hired in the city of Marathon Fire Rescue, right? And which amazing, right? You get done with fire school, and all of a sudden this general theme of brotherhood and camaraderie and all these things come together. And what better way to celebrate all this than to be with your best friends that you just went through hell with right after getting into that real big trauma bonding, and go out and party and have the best time of your life and drink and get into fights and have each other's back. And it was just chaos, but it was like, it was good chaos. And then, you know, you move into the fire service, which, you know, has all of these like rituals, I guess. And a lot of them have booze. And I differ from a lot of people when a lot of people saying that, like, you know, like alcohol is like this horrible thing when it comes to the fire service. And for me, and this is just me, again, everyone's story is different. Alcohol for me has a very big accountability issue because at the end of the day, it's always going to be me that decides I'm going to go do this. And if I don't have control over myself and my character, then it doesn't matter what's in front of me. I'm going to make a poor decision in any aspect of my life. But again, drinking gets ramped up in the fire service. And again, just like my family dynamic, it didn't matter if we were celebrating, and celebrations are everywhere. Someone getting promoted, someone retiring, someone switching shifts.
Holiday weekend.
Yeah, holiday weekends, going on a boys' trip, going to St. Patrick's Day, going to 9/11 to hang out with the other guys, right? And really, sit there, give yourself to these guys that have lost so many firemen and go drinking with them and hear the stories and cry and drink more and do all these things. And I love that because secretly I was an alcoholic. And now the fire service and the punk rock and the Irish lineage had given me this fucking cape I could wear and be like, oh yeah, that guy drinks a lot because he's Irish, or because he's a fireman, or because he's super into punk rock music, right? That's just the life he lives. But right around this time, like I said, that progression of death and acute death, and then all the things, the ugly side of the fire service that you don't really see with just the glamour and wearing the suits and looking dialed in and having the days off and having the contender started catching up with me because I wasn't processing things right. Regardless of what was going on in my personal life, the fact that I wasn't sleeping, the fact that, every once in a while I was seeing something horrible and not processing it, or talking about it, eventually, and I can't calculate and sit there and say, this is what did this, or this is what drove me over the edge, because it was accumulation of my lifestyle and possibly working. I mean, I don't think the work was the centering thing for me, but obviously
factors in for sure.
100%. And I think we run into a huge problem when we sit there, and I think it's Travis Howes that speaks about this, that we sit there and we give our trauma trophies, and we sit there and we grade them and we rate them, which sits there and it kind of makes, in my head or in anyone else's head, your trauma feel insignificant, because you're like, well, I can't be feeling this way because, this guy that just saw his entire platoon get killed feels this way, and I'm nowhere near that. So no, this is bullshit. This is something I can get over. So that's exactly what happened to me. I started, now, like I said, I can call it, I started getting really, really depressed. One of my friends actually in the city of Fort Lauderdale had an unfortunate incident. It can be called two different things. Some people say he fell. Some people said he did it on purpose. We're not going to know, but he ended up, passing away. In my zone. I was actually working in the City of Marathon for the time, but it's here and I have to drive by this building all the time. And it was horrible. It was devastating for me. I grew up with this kid my entire life, and he was gone. He was my best friend. And I couldn't really wrap my head around it, but I knew what I could wrap my hand around, and that was booze. And I drank myself stupid for better close to a year after that happened.
Again, talking to anybody about
God,
you're
no,
feeling or thinking,
no. That was, again, this is a very new concept. I got hired, I want to say in 2008. So any kind of talking about feelings, fucking old person would eat you alive at the table about, suck it up, get on the truck. And we've gotten a lot better about that now. I mean, this shit would never have happened beforehand. So after Kevin passed away, like I said, I'm still going to work. I'm still doing all these things. And I haven't really, come to grips with this yet. One of the trio of the best friends, my homeboy Enrique, used to come down, and he was doing real well for himself as a chef and doing consulting work. And he used to come down, and we'd go, on the day that Kevin passed away, we'd go hang out with his family. Well, I started getting phone calls from his sister being like, hey, have you seen Enrique? No. Well, he flew in, blah, blah, we don't know where he is. And turns out Enrique, I don't know what ended up happening, but he ended up becoming addicted to either heroin. Fentanyl wasn't around then. And he ended up overdosing. And when he overdosed, EMS got there, Narcan, the whole nine, goes to the hospital. He signs himself out AMA, comes back, and does the rest of the bag, and ends up passing away on the day, the date of Kevin's passing away, because Enrique didn't really deal with everything that was going on.
How was that for you?
Now I can sit here and I can talk about this, especially this incident, without crying, but it was horrible. me and you had that conversation earlier about, like having a real talk with someone whose loved one had just passed away, like especially in the field, and how hard it is and damning it is. Like there's nothing that you can do. And how you can kind of feel how bad this person is. And it's a horrible feeling. On that day, having to go to Kevin's mom's house to grieve her son who had passed away a couple years prior, and then let her know that pretty much for the most part, her other son had just, in essence, taken his own life, was probably the worst thing that I've ever felt in my entire life. And then having to tell this all to my mother. It was horrible. And again, I know this sounds like I keep repeating myself, but I didn't deal with anything. That wasn't on the radar, because in the fire service and just being the man, we talked about that masculine aspect of everything. Everyone thinks they're special. Everyone thinks that they're not susceptible, that it's like even as simple as like a sprain. I'm not hurt. It's not sprained. It doesn't hurt. And yeah, I've just refused to believe that like I had an issue. And this is when the real big portion of my depression happens. I think it's important to mention at this point that I was in a very committed relationship for probably 11 to 12 years throughout this entire thing. And towards the end of this, I started becoming a very, very distant, horrible partner. And it wasn't so much like verbally or obviously no physical stuff, but it was just like someone's mental health will hold that other person prisoner. And that's exactly what I was doing. I didn't want to do anything. I was pessimistic. Everything was a bad idea. It was always going to rain outside. And no one can live like that. And I ended up completely ruining that relationship. And she stuck it out for as long as she could until I actually ended it. And it was devastating. It was just really bad. And we're friends now, which is cool. And she's really happy that I'm doing well. But that's another thing. This isn't just like a one-sided issue. When someone has a mental health problem and crisis, it's a domino effect, what it does to the family and the loved ones, even the work dynamic. When someone's in a bad mood or a shitty or a negative mood, it just permeates every good thing in someone's life and their outside life. It's horrible. And that's what I really started doing. My work was getting bad. Like I was being short at work with people I was working with people I was talking to that, I was supposed to be rendering help with. And I noticed this in myself, and I still didn't care. At this point, and we can get back into like the drinking aspect and my addiction, I was drinking vodka or whiskey every night that I was off shift. Every day I was off shift, in excess. And I was always looking for something to do. Again, to have that excuse, so no one was just like, oh, he's drinking by himself, which is eventually what this turned into, was me not really wanting to hang out with anybody else and then drinking by myself.
Trying to escape your inner reality.
Oh, my God, yeah. So, again, this is my personal life, those two guys that had passed away. And then if we were to dive deeper into the fire service, at this time, like I had been, teaching and doing like small lectures and stuff at different fire conferences and going and doing all these things and meeting the most amazing people in the fire service. I always say punk rock in the fire department is so dynamic and beautiful because like you get to meet your heroes. Like I go to a punk rock show, there's not a million people there. There's a good chance I'm going to get to shake this guy's hand. And in the same aspect, like working for the fire department, if you sit there and you buy in and you just fall in love with the craft, these guys that have paved the way for you to, to really just excel at your profession are people that you can call on the phone and call for advice and do these things. And for me, when one of those guys passes away from suicide, it took my breath away. This is like, and I'll talk about this. Steve Negley's a really close friend of mine, and so is his brother, Matt. Matt ended up committing suicide a couple years back. He was the district chief for the city of Orlando. He was the first one at Paul's shooting. This guy was also instrumental in changing the fire service in the state of Florida with the Orlando Fire Conference and everything that Matt did. He did amazing. He was dealing with his own demons, and he ended up taking his own life. And it was soul crushing because this was the guy that, had it all together.
Seemingly, yeah.
Seemingly, right. We didn't know what was going on behind the scenes until after the fact. But this is who I saw myself wanting to be if I were to like drop everything. Matt was a guy that if we were out, Matt didn't drink, and if we were out at a bar and we had to teach the next day, he'd sit there and throw my drink away or something like that. He just embodied the heart of the fire service, and it was soul crushing, and it put a lot of people in a really bad way. And it really, at this point in time, when this happened with Matt, all of a sudden it made it possible for me. And I know that sounds callous or something a little bit, but it's like, if this guy could do it, now all of a sudden those weird feelings I was having about maybe I just get rid of this shit and like just die is the best option. I'd be out everybody's hair. Now all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, if this motherfucker just did this, then there's a chance that I could do this. And it was scary, but when everything got scary, what does that mean? I'm going to drink, right? We were at the funeral, we got hammered. Right after Matty passed away, one of my best friends, EJ Mascaro, who worked for Charleston Fire Department, EJ was in love with God, and he added a really good faith aspect to me because I've always struggled with faith and religion. And EJ was always a voice, a very kind heart that I could speak to. And I want to say a month after Matt's passing, or 2 months after Matt's passing, I got a phone call. I was out, and I woke up hungover. We were at at Fire Rescue East, and I was in a room with 5 guys, and I heard someone under their voice say something like, "Hey, one of Matty's best friends just passed away." And I was just like, "What?" And I woke up, and I had about 100 missed calls on my phone. And a week after EJ's birthday weekend, they were out, and they were drinking. And him, I think another Charleston fireman, and another guy were in a car. An 18-wheeler, I guess, pulled out in front of him, and like out of a hidden driveway, and he cut the car, I guess, to save everybody else in the car, and he ended up going into the back of it. The crew got there, and I'm pretty sure it was a North Charleston crew that ended up cutting their own guy out of the car, and they didn't know until they got there. The Charleston fireman lost his arm, and the other guy walked away with nothing going on. At that point, I can remember getting home, and I was a different person. It was just a matter of time. There wasn't enough happy moments at this point in my life for me to decide that, or to I guess, push aside the fact that I wanted to die and I wanted to kill myself. At the time, I was dating a woman, a wonderful woman, who had 2 children. She's an amazing mother. Their dad was awesome also, and we had a really cool family dynamic besides the fact I was so mentally sick. And I remember her saying to me, like, we tried doing the therapy route by myself, and there's nothing like getting a therapist and lying to them. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was like, man, that therapy session was great, and I didn't say a fucking word of truth the entire time. And it didn't work. And I was drinking every day. I get off shift. I would drink till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night so I could kind of time it out to where I wasn't going to blow if I ever got asked to do a breathalyzer while I was at work. But at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was drinking. And I would drink up until I had to go to work the next day. The relationship started getting a little bit sour. At this time, I had my first bout with esophageal varices. I was at Station 46, and all of a sudden started throwing up blood. Had to run and bang on the captain's office, and jumped in the back of a rescue right when I was getting off shift. And they took me over there, and I had the varices cauterized inside my throat. I had an endoscopy, and they were like, "Hey, by the way, you have liver cirrhosis, and you can't drink anymore. This is serious."
How old were you at that point?
I was 30. I was 30. No, 33, 34. And but again, I had a goal at this point. I was just like, I don't care. Right. And I started making up all these excuses. And so I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to stop drinking cold turkey. Well, that didn't work. I was like, okay, well, I'll have a glass of wine with dinner. A glass of wine turned into a bottle. And then I was like, all right, well, I'll just have one drink. And then one drink turned into 10. And then I was right back to where I was. Nothing had gotten better. And I was back in hell. Real hell.
Getting worse and worse each time?
Yeah, because every time I caught an L, like I was just like, there's definitely no getting back up. I kept digging that hole, that grave, so to speak.
So that baseline just got lower and lower.
Yeah, I wasn't really throwing any dirt out of the hole at this point. Like I was just like kind of like sitting there, and then I just slide all the way down it. Um, Again, the esophageal varices happens again, and I was at the house, and one of my best friends, who's a captain with our department, lives not too far away. I made a phone call to him, and he had rescue show up, and I almost died in the back of the truck that day.
What does that look like when you're throwing up?
So I got up, I had a sick stomach, and all of a sudden I started throwing up, and then it was just profuse bleeding, just pure blood. Like any kind of horror movie you've ever seen, I could not stop. Imagine you'd had 300 beers at a party, and all you could do was throw them up, and that's what I was doing with blood. I ended up having about 5 or 6 blood transfusions when I got to the hospital, and at that point they said, "Hey man, your liver is like probably stage 3 or stage 4 at this point." At that point, it was right around Christmas time. It's probably about 3 weeks to Christmas. I was in bad shape. I had gotten out of the hospital, and now my body's really starting to hurt and starting to look like it. Starting to get like a grayish color. And all of a sudden, my battalion chief, who's another one of my best friends, and my captain show up at the house, and they have an intervention. It's interesting to hear how this went for them now and what they would have done different. But they came in like hard chargers, and they came in and like, "Listen, you're killing yourself. You're ruining this family dynamic. You're going to rehab. That's it. Pack your shit. We're going." And
How did you receive that?
if anybody's seen Intervention or anything like that, that's exactly how it is. But now couple that with 3 aggressive alpha guys or alpha males that don't want to hear what the other fucking person has to say. And it was horrible. There was a lot of screaming. I told all of them to get fucked. I'm sorry for cursing so much, but
Part of it.
okay. My partner at the time, I blamed her. I couldn't believe the fact that she had these guys come out here when in essence, she was trying to save my life, right? It was horrible. But I ended up conceding for a little bit, and I was just like, you know what? I'll go, but wait until after Christmas, because I didn't want to ruin Christmas for the family, which was the most asinine thing ever. Because in my head, you have to understand, when it comes to alcohol and addiction, especially a depressed person, manipulation is like our biggest tool. And if I can manipulate a situation, whether it be to get alcohol, whether it to get what I want, to sneak alcohol, to do anything mischievous, it's like kind of like a dopamine hit for me, right? I'm gonna lie through my teeth to get what I need, right? To feed that drug, to feed whatever my mental state needs at that point. So me sitting there and convincing them that I'm gonna go in a month gave me 3 weeks of play. I did stay sober throughout that time. I was hurting, and I ended up going and doing my first stint of rehab.
How long was that?
I was in there for a month. But one thing I will say about rehab, and they say this in the beginning, and everybody says you're full of shit. When you first go do your first mental health journey into an inpatient rehab facility, is that you have to want to be there. You cannot go there to fix a relationship. You cannot go there to, because people are saying that you're acting out. You can't go there because people say that you have a drug or alcohol problem. You have to be there because yourself have realized in your soul, your heart, your mind, everything, that there's a problem and I need to fix it. And until that happens, you're never going to fully commit to getting better. Yeah, you will not commit. So when I went in there, my sole purpose was surviving, right? It was like going to prison for me. I was going to survive the month and not really take anything seriously as far as my mental health was concerned or the addiction aspect of things. The place that I went to was through FHE Health. It's a first responder program called Shatterproof, and it's military, police, and fire. The program's amazing. We can talk a little bit about that after the fact, but the first time that I went there, took everything like I was trying to get over on everybody. I sat through the group counseling sessions. You have your own therapist. They do brain scans. They sit there and they get really in depth about what trauma looks like, how there isn't really in the brain mapping, there isn't a difference between you experiencing a traumatic event from just like an emotional standpoint as opposed to getting hit in the head. They're very similar. It showed what alcohol did to my brain. And all this entire time I was just like, I got fucking 20 days left. So let me eat this up, right? It was like sitting in doing a target solution training at work. Like, all right, I just fucking sit through this stupid video. That's exactly how I went through this, right? So I took nothing from it. And there was gold in it. There was a lot. We had speakers that come in and sat there and, gave their testimonies and stuff like that. And I just didn't give a shit. I wanted to get out. So I get out, and at that point, the first thing I want is like, hey, I'm coming home and stuff like that. And partner was like, no. She's like, you got a lot of work to do. That's another thing that people don't understand about addiction recovery or even like mental health recovery is like you go into these places in this giant bubble where you assume and your body tells you that the world has stopped. Everyone, when you get out of here, is going to understand that you're a changed person, you're a new person, and forgive you for all of the wrongs that you may have done in your life. It doesn't. And life also happens also. People do different things. People meet different people. Life happens. People pass. You might have lost your apartment. Like lots of different things happen. You might be in a different space as far as your work is concerned. And all of a sudden you're just, boom, you're out. And like you go to like IOP, which is like intensive outpatient, but it's still like you're back out in the wolves. Temptation's back. All of your old demons are all around. Like there's a lot, right? And so, yeah, me coming back to the house was non-existent at that point. Our relationship was in the gutter, and there was nothing I can do about it. Like it was shot. It was shot in the head a long time ago. When we finally started ending things, it was I only had one option at that point, right? It was just like, oh well, I'm gonna start drinking again. Suicide was very real for me in this point. Every day, there wasn't a second that went throughout the day that I didn't want to die of some sort. And the ideations are crazy, and you think of them like, oh, it's just a passing thought, but when you're deep in it, it's very, very serious. Like you're plotting everything from, okay, right. How am I going to figure out funeral costs? Like, how am I going to do these things? Like, I want it to be clean. Yeah, dude, you turn into fucking Dexter for yourself for the most part. And you want a really elaborate plan. Like you want everything to really just be like done and over with. And when you plan for it and you sit there and you start talking like, okay, well, I wonder where they're going to have the service at, and where do I want to be buried? Do I want to shoot myself in the head? Do I want to shoot myself in the mouth? Like maybe the chest, maybe I want everyone to know what the fucking pain that I've been going through, right? Maybe I want to cut my wrist. Maybe I want to write something on a wall. Very sick, twisted shit. And you can't get out of it. Right around when this is all happening, I remember she told me, she goes, I know where you're at right now. And she goes, if you do what I think you're going to do, the people in your life are going to be affected and feel just like you are eventually. And I took that to heart. And not in the way that I should, because to me it meant, since me and death, I had signed that paper already in my head. But I couldn't kill myself. But if I died by alcohol, I would just be another drunk, right? And that seemed like something I could live with. And it seemed like, everyone knew, that guy drank too much, right?
You can hide your intention behind it.
Of course. And they could just be like, oh, yeah, he had an alcohol problem. Which, now thinking about it, like I think of all the people that died from cirrhosis or anything like that, or, liver failure, chronic liver failure. It's like, did they have the same issues I did? And they like think about the same things that I did, and this is just like they're out. And so that's exactly what I did. I drank myself to death. My aunt ended up going into hospice in New Jersey, and me and my father were going to go up there and see her. And I remember getting off shift, and I stopped at Flanagan's. And at this point, I'm hiding bottles everywhere also, throughout the house, in my truck, everywhere. I was also actively detoxing at work, to the point where I was like afraid I was going to have a seizure while I was on shift because I had gone with alcohol for so long. Doing IVs, anything like that, were a thing of the past. I could barely keep my hands straight to sit there and tap on the tablet. I was bad. Everybody at work knew it, and they were trying to do all they could. But
you no longer able to hide it.
No,
now it's an obvious thing.
No, my colors changed at this point. I've lost a ton of weight. Everyone thought I was on drugs. So I get off shift. I went and I bought 10 of the small little bottles of Tito's. And I had a couple on the plane. We get off, and I'm starting to. My body's really failing at this point, and that's something else I'll get into. You really know when you're dying. So if anybody's suffering from anxiety and you guys are feeling like something's going on, when your time is being called, your body knows, and it's a different thought that goes through your head. So I hope that alleviates some people's anxiety when it comes to that. We got into New Jersey, went and saw my aunt, and the last thing I remember is me and my dad coming home from dinner. And this is a very hard part of the story for me also, too, because my dad knew that I shouldn't have been drinking. And, like his baby sister was dying. We went out to dinner that night, and it was snowing and like fucking 20 degrees cold. No, it wasn't snowing, but it was like 20 degrees outside. And I was like, I'll have a whiskey with you. And he's like, are you sure? And I knew in his voice he didn't want me to have it, but I had a drink in front of him. And so apparently the next day we woke up and we went and had breakfast at a diner in New Jersey. And we came back and he was like, hey, you look really tired. Why don't you take a nap? So when he came back in the room, he said that there was a little bit of blood on my pillow. And when he woke me up, I just started throwing up blood again. And he said that, like, I crawled off the bed and told him to call rescue. Rescue got there, and they were EMTs. And I apparently went out in the back of the truck. They got me to wherever they needed to be. They got me up into surgery. They cauterized what they could. I will remember kind of waking up in the ICU and then being like, hey, yeah, blah, blah, yeah, you're here now. We had an ablation, all this stuff. And that's the only thing I remember. So what happened after that was they ended up flying me to a different hospital in Camden called Cooper's, which is a university hospital. It's a very, very good hospital. Flew me over there. They did what's called a TIPS procedure, which is like it helps with portal hypertension and people who suffer from cirrhosis and, esophageal varices. And it's like a shunt, but it's a stop procedure. Like, it's not like a full-term thing. Your liver's already shot. But this is like the last step you would do before you go into transplant. And so while I was there, I think my hemoglobin was like at a 3. It was dire. Pressure went into the dumps, heart stopped, put hands on my chest. Did the whole thing. I think I got 12 or 13 blood transfusions. They did the TIPS procedure. They were able to stop the bleeding. They tried flying me back down to Fort Lauderdale. Apparently almost coded again, and they didn't, and then they ended up flying me home. So, crazy part here, this isn't like a hero's story. This is like some fireman that did all this cool shit and, deserved the welcoming that I got. My mom had flown home on the jet with me. The department had sat there and started a GoFundMe and ended up getting like $50,000 in 2.5 days that paid for the flight home. And when I flew home, the engines, the ladders, everything's sitting there. I'm intubated at this time, are sitting there waiting on the tarmac, which was amazing now, thinking that they went out and did those things. And it was awesome for my mom because she needed all these guys. And they got off the plane and, they helped out and were holding my mom and took care of her. And so that was very, very special for me. And it wasn't warranted. Like, there was no need for any of that. And I really do. I can't praise my department anymore or the city of Fort Lauderdale for everything that they did for me through this very, very trying time. I was in a coma for 3 weeks throughout this entire process. And then I ended up waking up on St. Patrick's Day.
Jeez. The irony, bro.
Very crazy. And so waking up after being intubated and unconscious for a very long time is very interesting. Nothing works. It's hard to open your mouth. It's hard to talk. It's hard to use your hands. You can't walk. Can't go to the bathroom. I had a tube sticking out of every hole that I had in my body. And it was a very, very humbling experience.
What was that first thought when you opened your eyes? Like,
to be honest, like, I was still pretty sick mentally at this point.
Yeah.
Like, there hadn't been really any therapy since I had been to rehab. So my first point was like, fuck, I'm not dead.
fuck, I'm still here.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I mean, now looking back on it, it's even hard. Like, it gives me goosebumps even fucking thinking about thinking that way. But yeah, I woke up and I had an amazing nurse. She was this like older Indian woman who like loved me and would sit down and talk to me. And I was really going through it because I'd realized at this point how like my parents had been with me throughout this whole time. I felt so alone in all these things, and now everybody is taking their time out. People are working for me on shift. My parents have been by my side throughout this entire aspect, and now like I'm just like, I'm such a horrible person, right? And now I'm just self-sabotaging any growth that I've had because I'm a piece of shit. Now I need to die, right? So they're like, you have this SIPS procedure, right? And I remember coming in and the doctors all talking to me. And I had like thousands of doctors in there just coming because they're like, we can't believe that you're alive at this point. And they come in and they're like, hey, you're going to have to get a liver transplant. And they told me point blank, they're like, there's nothing else that you can do. And I said, and in my head, in my conscious head, like I've still got that demon in my head saying, well, no, we're not doing that. You're going to fucking die. We need to die. Like, we're already here.
You're committed.
We're committed.
In your head.
And the empathetic aspect of me, the fireman, the son, the person that wanted to fucking be there to help everybody for my, the majority of my life, whether it was my friends, the community that I serve, anybody, was like, dude, you can't get a liver transplant because you're going to drink again. You can't. No matter how selfishly I fucking, in back of my head, like, no, I can swing this again. I get a new livery. Maybe I can drink. So I ended up, I'm waking up and learning to do all these new things. And so I've decided at this point I'm not going to get the liver transplant. So right around this time, I took like there was like a weird transition because originally they told me I couldn't go back to work. The only solace I guess I had was work at this point because it was the only thing that was like kind of structured, right? And something really like happened in my mind at this point. And I call it, I guess like the fourth quarter. So obviously we're in South Florida. There's got to be some Dolphin fans around. Forever, the Dolphins, it was just like they get their ass kicked for 3 quarters and then all of a sudden they would turn it on in the fourth quarter. And it was like because they had that like time limit, right? And they were just like, we're going to lay it all out. So after hearing that I had a year, maybe a little bit more, until the procedure that they had done was going to be done and I was going to be dead, I thought that I got to get everything I want out of life in this year. And if I drank, whatever, but I want everything in life, right? So what ended up happening was I sat and I went back to physical therapy. I went to occupational therapy, I went to physical therapy, and I started getting my strength back. Once I got my strength back, the first thing I wanted to go back and do is go to rehabilitation. So now, this newfound life that I had, and I knew I only had a little bit left, I was just like, I want to really experience what it's like to be happy again. So I went in with the intention, and again, intention is always very, very important in life. I went in with the intention that I was going to get better. Like I had mapped this out. I was manifesting the fact that this is it, and I'm going to get better, and at least I'm going to die with a clean conscience, with a like a light heart. I owed that to my family at that point. I owed it to myself. I'd been unhappy for so long that like I needed this. So I went in there, and I went back to therapy, and I did everything that I was told, and I embraced it, and I listened, and I guess prayed on it. And I got through rehabilitation, and I was like, man, I feel better, right? And now the procedure is really working because I had felt so sick as I had been drinking forever that like this is my first chance of like my body feeling somewhat okay, and my like my color's starting to turn. I couldn't deal with not going to work. I couldn't, like, it wasn't like I wanted to like go travel. I had a year left. I was just like, no, man, I'm going to have expenses. This is going to be expensive. Like, if I do end up dying now in a year, like, I've got this much I've got to, like, work. But they wouldn't clear me to go back to work. There was no doctor that would clear me to go back to work. I had, like, a weird procedure done, and, like, I was terminal, right? It's a crazy fucking word, right? Like, you're terminal. There's no – that's it. I mean –
there's a countdown.
Yeah. I mean, now when we think about it, there's always a fucking countdown, right? So that fourth quarter mentality, I was just like, I'm going to do everything. And you know what? I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to make shit right at work because I had been a horrible employee in my own mind. Maybe not to everybody else, but in my head, like, I wasn't present. Like, I wasn't where I needed to be. So I did what any Miami delinquent kid would do. I went to Hialeah, and I got a fake-ass doctor's note that said that I was cleared to go back to full duty. So I went and I presented this note, and I remember looking into these chiefs' faces like, are you fucking kidding me? And they were like, no. Nope. I go, it's in the note.
Good to go.
It's in the note. And boom, I was back on shift, right? And, you know, I was working on myself. I was going to therapy. You know, I was really enjoying this time. And it's, man, to put this in perspective, your last day of vacation. Like you really like you're trying to get everything you can out of it. You're like, there's all these shops I wanted to go to. I want to go eat at this fucking restaurant. I want to go see this. I want to take a picture here. That's how my mind was working all the time. And I didn't have alcohol that was sitting there and like making that foggy, weird feeling. And throughout that year and running the calls and doing all these things, my mind, that fucking weird fog that I had been suffering for my entire life, started lifting. The depression wasn't there because I didn't have anything to worry about. Like I was just like, I was so interested and involved in the moment, the everyday second, that the air looked different, colors looked different, fucking breathing felt different, seeing things was different.
So you were focused now on living versus before you were focused on dying.
I was hyper focused on death and suicide and all these things. And now I'm trying to get everything I can out of life. What's dynamic about this whole, I guess, phoenixism is, right? Like, it took me dying and being there and being right where I was to really appreciate the things that had been there the entire fucking time for me. The relationships with my family got better. The relationships with everybody, my work family, my experiences got better. Conversations got deeper. Everything in my life, when I started wanting to live, got better. In the heart of my depression, in the deepest portion of it, I was never, ever, ever trying to be happy. I was content on the fact that I was depressed, and that's just how it was. There was never a time where I was just like, I'm going to fucking physically dial in and try everything to be happy. If I had broken my arm, or if I had hurt something and I had to get back to making that work, I would go through anything. I would go through all the surgeries I needed to, all the rehabilitation to get my hand back to work so I can get it to open up like this. But for whatever reason, other people can't make this distinction with our own mind, where we're just, no one would be content with just be like, yeah, my arm's fucked. I don't want to use it. I'm just never going to be able to use it before.
Especially if there's unexplored options available.
Yeah, there's treatment for it. Oh, there's treatment for it. No, I don't want the treatment. No, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
I'm going to be angry about it.
No one does that shit. But with your head and your mind, you're just content with just being depressed. No, I'm depressed. That's what it is. I'm just going to be sad for the rest of my life. Oh, you want me to sit there and, you'll work on meditating, or you want me to work on positive, thought and all these things? No, that's stupid. It's not going to work. We're so pessimistic to that. That last year, I was like, fuck, I'm going to try anything. And guess what? Everything started getting better. Everything in my life. And now we meet this crossroad where my mind is beautiful. It's thriving. It's so happy. I want to live, and my body is just completely failing. So again, I'm getting to that year and a half mark, and I remember we had to do a RIT drill, and one of my best friends was a company officer that day, and we went out to do a RIT drill, and at this point, I am completely yellow. Like, I mean, jaundiced yellow. Like, you guys can't see this, but the yellow button on this, that's what I look like. And being at the firehouse, guys are ruthless, and which is exactly what I needed, because if they would have treated me any different, it would have been a really long thing. But they made fun of me constantly, dude. They called me Yellow Fella. Matty Johnson. My name is Matty Johnson, so it was a good one. They were awesome. They were real cool, and they still included me in everything, which was great. But they knew that I was getting real bad. I tried to do this RIT drill. I ended up completing it, but it was the worst thing I've ever done. I thought I was going to pass out, and I knew at that point I was done. I went to Wichita, Kansas to go to a class, and when I came back from Wichita, I knew I was going down real south. I met with a doctor I hadn't seen in a long time, because since I knew I was dying, I just went on a whole self-prescribing myself medication kick, and was treating my own symptoms, and because I couldn't tell anybody I was going back to work and doing all these things. So I became a doctor in that year. And by the time I got to the doctor, I had my blood work done. They were like, you need to get to the hospital right away. And I was like, what are you talking about, bro? I'm in Brickell. I'm having lunch. And they're like, you need to go to the doctor. When I went to the hospital, I got to Cleveland Clinic, they were like, hey, we're not going to sugarcoat this. You should have been done. You should have been dead 2 to 3 months ago. You should have been unconscious about 4 to 5 weeks ago. We do not know why you're still alive. My MELD score, I think, was at 42, which is horrible. If anybody who's listening knows about liver function, you're in the medical field. We're going to get you comfortable, and you're going to be in hospice. That's it. And hospice, right?
What did you think? What did you feel after having so many advances in your mind at that point?
It was fucked up because I was getting exactly what I wanted, right? Everything forever for the last 3 to 4 years of my life. All I wanted to do was fucking die, right? And now I've got my golden ticket, right? Here it is. You're done.
No, you don't want it.
And I was like, get this shit away from me. What are you talking about? I couldn't have it, right? I had that fighting spirit back. Everything was alive. And this is the testament to a positive mindset and really working through the mental health aspect of this. My body should have been dead 2 months prior to this, but I wanted to fucking live. My head was fucking so jazzed up on life and everything and every beautiful aspect of it. The sad part of this is I hadn't told anybody besides one person at work, and he didn't believe me, that I was terminal. So now, after getting this news, I have to tell my parents who are coming to the hospital at this point that I'm not getting out of here. And that happened. So parents get there, and I explain to them it's horrible. I can't really get too deep into that because I will start fucking bawling crying at this point. But telling a mother of one that you're not going to be around is just not a thing.
Right. Talking to your friend's mother was tough. Talking to your own mother must have been.
It was horrible. Yeah. So a man I need to mention right now is his name's Dr. Roach. He's also the medical director of Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, and I think Broward as well. He had been with me. He took me off the medic transport from New Jersey off the airplane, and he'd been with me throughout this entire process. He came in, and his words were to me, he was the director of an emergency room at Cleveland Clinic, and he goes, "Hey, do me a favor and just don't die tonight." And I said, "Okay, sure, dick," right? The next day, the transplant team met with me, and they're like, "Hey, we want absolutely nothing to do with you. You haven't taken any tests. You haven't done anything. We don't know if you've drank." That's another thing I need to tell everybody. So that year, right, where I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to die. I had been sober for 1.5 years at this point.
Wow.
No alcohol, right? It's crazy. Started working on myself, and I didn't need alcohol anymore.
Right.
I ended up going through a series of 4 days of testing, which usually takes 2 months. It almost killed me. Lots of blood transfusion, passing out, not eating. It was bad, real bad. As soon as that happened, I ended up getting passing and making a candidate on the list. After that, 16 hours later, they gave me a phone call, and they were like, "We found a liver for you. How do you feel about this?" And my heart sunk. It's like, no way. And after 13 and a half hour surgery, that was it.
The next day?
13 and a half hours. And I woke up.
What did you tell? How was that story to your mother?
That was a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was funny because the woman on the phone, when we were talking, she was like, "I need you to do me a favor right now, and I need you to call whoever you need to because you've got about 2 minutes before you completely break down." And I was like, "What is she talking about? I'm so happy." I called my mom, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, you're not going to believe what just happened." She's like, "What happened?" And I was like, and I couldn't talk, and I just started crying. Yeah. Working in this field for so long and sitting there and trying to be someone that helps and does these things and helps other people, to find out that someone essentially passed away and is now giving you life. It's unexplainable. Gratitude's not a word that describes that feeling. And I guess that's kind of where this journey has led me now, and why I'm talking about this right now is I have to get this out, right? This the fact that I was in hell for so long, and all it took was a little bit of work on myself, and trying to be happy is what made this all possible. And I was blessed with a support system, and all of these things, and the backing of my fire department and my friends sticking by me throughout the entire process, it's 100% like from someone. The fact is I shouldn't be here right now having this conversation, right? I should have died. I should have killed myself already. All of these things should have happened, but for whatever reason it didn't. And the only thing that I can think, and not being a very religious person, is that I'm here for a fucking reason. And what I've been doing lately and what's been going on is just me sitting, having these talks, talking to people that are in very similar situations, and trying to convey that anything is possible in this life.
So what do you tell somebody that finds themselves in a similar position like you did? They don't have the will to live. They're closed off. They're lonely. They're in their head. What do they need to hear? What did you need to hear?
You have nothing to lose by putting all of your fucking effort into getting better. Try everything, because it isn't a fucking stitched out plan. This isn't a one road. It's not one path that you have to take. Everybody's is different. And if you catch something from, maybe writing down your dreams, as mundane as that sound, or something like that really hits for you, that's going to set your path on fire. That's what's going to get you to start moving. There's so many options to say that, like, fuck it, I'm done, is senseless, because we wouldn't do that for other things. If it was somebody else, you'd be sitting there trying to get them to fight and do all these things. But when it comes for us, we're horrible at taking care of ourselves in that aspect. Dude, you gotta fight. You just gotta fight, and it's a beautiful fight too, because the over that hill, it's great.
So how do we? Somebody's going through it. You want to reach out. Mm-hmm. What can we do?
Well, I am a perfect resource for this. Again, I'm not a clinician. I can only share you with my story. But if what has happened to me in my life, if it resonates with you in any path, then we can work as hard as we need to in that aspect. And that's kind of what I've been doing as far as 6 Feet Over is concerned. Again, reach out. If this is a first responder who's sitting here talking, reach out to your department. EAP is a great asset. It is very confidential and stuff like that, but getting the ball rolling and being very honest with everything that you're going through and breaking that stigma of us showing our feelings or anything like that is so important, and it's the first step in getting better into a healthy environment.
I think that's part of our work with men in general, in the fire department mainly, is setting up the stage where people feel safe and comfortable opening up to you. And a part of that is sharing our own stories with people in a vulnerable way so that they can understand, okay, if I ever need to connect and talk to you, I'm going to reach out to you.
Again,
and you can definitely do that for each other.
Brutal honesty, anybody. And I don't know why that became something that wasn't popular. I mean, why do we want these men or anybody in that fashion a shell of themselves, especially in a very dangerous capacity as far as work is concerned, but even in a family one? We need to be better for each other and then better for ourselves at the end of the day. And just being honest and trying to be happy is going to be the best thing.
So a question for you. What is the right way to have an intervention or talk to someone about addiction?
Okay. Well, the one thing I'll say is there's no right way to any of this when it comes to this. There's going to be a lot of juggling. I didn't get too far into it. But afterwards, speaking to the guys that did the intervention with me for the first time, understanding that no one is going to do something unless they want to do it themselves is the most important part. So coming down on somebody very aggressively, and that, just like we've seen on TV, is just like, this is what's wrong with you, you need to go get this done, is only going to push someone further away. Especially when it comes to a man. A man, regardless, doesn't want to be told what to do from anybody, not even a peer. It just doesn't come off right. Getting down to their level and letting them know that you're going to be there for them and when they need you is the most important thing you can do. Everybody's fall is different, right? But that rock bottom, once it hits, that's when they're going to sit there and reach out. And that's when they're going to sit there and they're going to need you at that point. But coming on strong, definitely, at least in my life. And again, people are different, but this is just a very, very big spectrum. And from clinicians that I've spoke to after the fact, sitting there and just being there for them when they need you and letting them know that you're going to be there through the thick of it is the most important thing that you can do.
Right. Presence.
Yes.
Presence and availability.
Honesty is also a big one.
And a willingness to listen.
Mm-hmm.
How has therapy helped you?
Immensely. From inpatient and stuff like that was like the first thing that turned me on to it. I speak to two different therapists. One is more like a work-life balance, and the other one is just like trying to keep up on, just being happy and nice things. It's amazing once you open yourself up to hearing someone else's perspective on a situation in your life.
Yeah.
It's amazing because you can sit there and you can latch onto it. You can ditch what you don't need. But again, like they're going to say something that might really, really resonate with you and stick in your head and that you can apply to, your goal, your end goal of getting better and feeling healthy and other options. If I wanted to learn how to swing a baseball bat and hit a ball, right, and do all these things, we would always, if we had the opportunity to go speak to a professional or a Major League Baseball player or a hitting coach and do all these things. So why not sit there and talk to somebody that sat there and is empathetic to the point where they're going to go to school and learn all of these different options and things that they can tell you that will guide you through your process. It seems so simple when we like talk about doing it a different way, but with our mind,
Right.
that ego is a killer.
And that's what I tell people is two things. You have to go in there honest. Because if I'm having pain in my left knee and I tell you I have right ankle pain and you treat me for the right ankle pain, I can't be mad that my left knee still hurts, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be honest. And I tell everybody as well, ask for permission to be brutally honest with her, with my therapist, and also ask her to be brutally honest with you. You want her to be like, yo, what the fuck were you thinking, sir? You need to hear the truth.
Of course.
And in seeing that, you can then see different options available to you that you weren't seeing through your own perspective.
Therapy is dynamic too in the sense that you might not vibe with the first person that you talk to. And therapists, listen, they're not going to take offense to that. This isn't like, hey, do you want to go on a date with me? Right. It's not like that. Like, if you guys aren't kicking it off right, just be like, hey, thank you very much, but this isn't working for me. And you pull out and you go find somebody that does work with you. To get back to the lying aspect of it, it's very, very interesting. If you talk to somebody who goes in who's worried about, like, going to the dentist or something like that, hey, do you have any tooth pain? If you don't tell the dentist that you have tooth pain because you're afraid of what you have to do afterwards, nothing's going to get fixed. And it's the exact same thing with mental health or addiction. You're afraid of what they're going to tell you need to go do. What am I going to do if I can't drink anymore? Right. What am I going to do if maybe I have to separate, like I can't do this anymore?
And the story you create about that
is horrible. Right. It's the worst thing ever. And it's a lie. It's like this weird defense mechanism that's actually self-sabotaging your inner peace, your happiness, your goal.
So now that you're here on your journey, what are things that you do on a daily or consistent basis to keep you on that bright side of mental health and not on that dark side?
Physical fitness is going to be the one for me that has completely replaced, I want to say, that addictive portion of my life. For me, I had a very, again, my experience is very dynamic, but having to not being able to move my arms and get up to work out even if I wanted to, when I couldn't do that, that's why I was like, I never want to be there. I want to be in the best shape of my life, God forbid anything else were to happen. Right. And for my job. It doesn't pay to be an out-of-shape fireman. It doesn't help the community. It doesn't help anything out. Right. And those workout sessions are so beneficial, like the mind. And I'm a big believer in the ice bath too. A lot of people think it's very.
I've been running from that, but I know that's next on my.
Yeah, I know. Like my ice bath and my pumpkin spice latte. But no, I'm telling you, man, the ice bath it's awesome. We're doing it a lot at work, but physical conditioning for me, the therapy things, and then. Really just being accountable, like taking time for yourself. The work hustle's hard. And if you don't take enough time for yourself and your family, that's another dynamic we didn't really dive too deep into, but everyone please needs to understand that if you're not good with you, you're not good to anybody else.
Right. If you're not showing up for yourself, it's impossible to show up for
people. You're no good to yourself, half good, because that's how you're only going to give less of that to everybody else that's depending on you for anything at that point. But again, big physical fitness person. The therapy is huge, and have awesome friends.
How's your relationship with sleep? How's your relationship with sleep?
So sleep beforehand was horrible. Again, and I think I attribute a lot to my good sleep now to the workflow, like working out and stuff like that, and really making myself physically tired throughout all of that.
Especially for us, man, we already struggle with sleeping because of our shift work. That if we're not intentional with it, especially the night before shift, we can go on 3 or 4 days where we're
And there's no catch up.
and then you're in a fog yourself.
Yeah.
How do you show up as a father, as a husband, as a friend when you're in that state? You know?
Yeah, you can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, right.
The other thing, there's going to be setbacks. Progression in mental health isn't like, it's not just like a linear, like it's up and down. We're going to have our good days. And that's something that I think everybody, this isn't like when you have a bad day or you're starting to get into your feelings again, that doesn't mean you failed. It's just going to happen. I am not 100% every day in my life. I still go through my fucking troubles. And, you know, when I do, that algorithm, so to speak, of what I know I need to do to get back on track is where that kicks in. Because just quitting and giving up because you've had a fucking stumble in the road will get you nowhere.
Fast.
And it's going to happen. And again, with addiction, relapse is going to happen. All of those things are going to happen. The end goal is that we understand that and we get right back on the horse and we start moving forward. We're not going to let this like little like hiccup fucking get in the way of our end goal, which is just, you know, thriving in life and loving life and not the other shit.
And do you have like an accountability partner or some friends
100%,
that you know,
dude.
you can be like, yo, I'm going through it. Let's meet up. And
I got super lucky, obviously, from going to the dealing with the addiction aspect of that, and then also with the fire support and stuff like that. I've got guys that are clinicians that I can reach out to all the time, and even my best friends. We have a really neat dynamic in the fire service that obviously you're aware of. We talk about everything, and we're worse than, you know, like a bunch of teenage girls, like as far as the gossip and shit is concerned. I share intimate details of my life with the guys on my crew. And I was just in the training bureau, and it was like everybody was going through their own shit. But like, if anybody else were to sit there and listen and like be that fly on the wall and listen to what we talk about, we're not thinking about it, having a therapy session every time we're sitting there and engaging, and it's amazing. Yeah,
that is something that I think we can build more of and be more intentional of, without having to hit that rock bottom. Like we can already talk about our struggles before it becomes a big problem, so that it just gets we get repositioned to go in a different direction.
Yeah, let me be the example. Again, like I said, I'm not supposed to be here. If 9 people had the same scenario that I did, 9 of them would be dead, or 10 people, 9 of them would be dead, and I'd be the one or whoever it was living. Let me be the fucking example that switch that I had to go through from death and everything else. You can get off of that
way before.
Take that exit. Yeah. Take that exit and start going this way. Again, I'm just extremely blessed, and I'm really happy that I got to come out here and share this and do this. And I really appreciate
your story is very inspiring, and I think if someone who's in a dark place hears what you have to say, the most appealing, hopeful part is your change in perspective on life and how much life you have and how much you want to live, and that it's possible. That when you can be here thinking it's all over, but within you can have a switch that completely changes your inner state and it changes your outer side of life. So I think is a powerful testimony, man. It's been an honor to chop it up with you.
Yeah, it's been epic. The one thing I want to end on is the darkest and the deepest part of your life, and you think about this, and where there's no hope left. I went from there to worse, to death, from there to hospice, to never being on a truck again, or to terminal, to going back on the fire truck, to hospice, to liver transplant, to you'll never be a fireman again, to now fighting a fire last night. So put that in perspective, and everyone needs to know that. From not being able to walk, a tube everywhere, liver transplant patient, to back being a firefighter and doing my job again and loving life. Life is crazy, man.
Yeah. And it starts with you.
That's it.
And your willingness to fight and show up for yourself. And I think once you do start, you start to realize there's a lot more to you than you realized about yourself. We have a lot more power and potential within us to create a magical life. But we have to be in that state of wanting to create a magical life.
Yeah.
You know?
That's it. Want to live.
Yep.
So again, alcohol was my best friend when it came to like anything happy or sad. And I had to learn how to be happy also just like I had to learn how to be sad again and be able to cope with things. The biggest thing, the physical fitness, is definitely one of them. But after that, it's the mindset and just understanding life. If you get bad news and you're not in a good place, it's easy to fall off track at that point. But if you're constantly in that like state and of just, understanding and like wealth in life, bad times become seemingly easier. Again, it also gets back to that algorithm. Like if you sit there and you're constantly preparing and doing the mental work and doing the mindfulness and doing all these things, then your body is ready for like different things. But when you get bad news, when you're not and you're in a horrible spot, that's when you start to spiral out of control, I think. And bad news is like it just comes whenever it does. It's not like you're waiting for it. So you always have to be in that that state of preparedness, which essentially is just being good with yourself and everything else. Just constant work on yourself. That's it.
Putting yourself a priority, putting your wellness
Always.
a priority, your physical, emotional, mental health.
And accountability. We didn't get to talk on that, but accountability is a big part of my recovery. I put myself in this position, and it's my job to get myself out of it with help from others. It won't pass unless you start actively trying to do something about it. Let's get through everything. Every single thing. If we move back into like small body parts and stuff like that, if I hurt my arm and my initial thought is forget trying to fix this, forget trying to rehab this, let's cut it off. That seems drastic. It doesn't make sense. We can't make sense of that. So the last thing we should be thinking, because we're having a sickness or like what I like to call a head cold, so to speak, why we wouldn't do everything and send every avenue of treatment to that first. The first step, if you're sitting there and you're talking about suicide, you're there. Even like a small glimpse of it. So at that point, we're calling in the big dogs. Like, I need help. And that's the dropping of the ego. That's the brutal honesty, and that's the accountability of yourself. I'm here, and I need to get better, and I need to tell someone about it. And it's that simple. The hardest part is letting someone know that you're hurting. We wear that tough exterior, and this goes for women too. You don't want to sound weak. You don't want to feel like you can't handle your own shit. So telling someone that like you want to do the worst possible thing imaginable sounds impossible, but it's not. It's 3 words. I need help. It's that simple. And it's crazy what ends up happening when that happens. I need help. Well, guess what happens? This person talks to this person, and then everybody, the cavalry shows up. Everybody. We are so good at treatment and fixing when someone's honest and someone says that they have a problem. But everyone, you have to say you have a problem. At the end of the day, if you're a pessimist, say you have a problem and let it fail you. Because at the end of the day, if that's the case, then you tried everything you possibly could. But don't tell me that it's over and it's a doomsday scenario and that's it. I'm depressed. I'm suicidal. I'm going to kill myself. If you haven't exhausted every option, for Christ, like, I would, for my addiction, drive from Miami to fucking Palm Beach to get a bottle of vodka, right? If they told me every store was just like, nope, it's closed, it's closed, it's closed, it's closed, it's closed. I'd drive as far as I needed to fix that addiction. Become addicted with life. Become addicted with that feeling of I want to be happy. I want to be here for the short amount of fucking time I have. That's what you do. Let everything fail you, but don't sit there and count yourself out first. 3 words. I need help. That's it. Death. I didn't. Like I said, and I have to. This is the honest truth about this is I should not be here anymore. I was that person that should have died. So the only thing that got me here was me hitting my rock bottom, which was death. That is the only thing, and that is not promised, and it's not. And that's why the only thing that I can do at this point is sit there and get people to not get where I do, because the majority of the time you don't get up.
At what point in your story, now that you know what you know, should you have asked for help?
100 and listen, the second that your mental health or an addiction gets in the way of your daily grind, or taking care of your family, or loving people, or sad thoughts, or self-harm thoughts, or anything like that, as minute as they are, you need to become the biggest hypochondriac about your mind and seek help immediately. We get like a weird cough after like taking a vitamin, and we're fucking Wikipediaing and looking up everything, WebMDing, like, oh my God, what are the symptoms? What should I do? And we're willing to go through the craziest lengths to fix something that we might have eaten wrong, or a stomach bug, or a sprained ankle, over something tiny, like a cough, a sneeze, something minute. If you are having really, really sad thoughts that aren't going away, that are outweighing your good thoughts throughout a day, that's the time. That's the time. And we have a lot of like there's a lot of options. It would be different. Like if we were talking 25 years ago, like especially in the first responder field, like who do I go talk to? You don't talk to anybody. You suck it up and you get back on a truck. You don't want that stigma attached to you at all. I don't want to second guess somebody who's sitting there and like worried about some burnt up kid they just saw. What if that happens again? I want that guy off my truck. No, that's not the case, man. It's not normal for us to see the shit that we do, or some things. It's all this is a simple conversation you might need to have with somebody.
And what we're doing here is further changing that tide.
Yeah.
So that it's a normalized thing, because it's something that we all deal with, whether you're a first responder or not. We just happen to be a little bit more in a intense scenario where we see a lot of this.
And to excuse my language on this, it doesn't make you a pussy to be a well-rounded person. It doesn't, or to share your feelings, or to want to be better in life. That I don't know where that happened, or how that takes away from you being better for yourself and everybody else, but it doesn't, man. It makes you stronger.
Right.
Strong-willed and brave. It's fucking brave to sit there and get help and be better. Cool?
Thank you, dog.
Hell yeah, man.
Love you, bro.
Hell yeah.